Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Nikitinaknits. My name is Evgenia, and in this video I'm so happy to share with you 7 steps guide to plan your knitting. The cold season is just about to start, and of course I was thinking on my future knits. And the first feeling, unfortunately, that I got was huge stress and overwhelm. At first I didn't understand where these emotions come from. I thought maybe they're connected to some life events that I had when I was thinking about them. But no, I noticed that every time I was sitting down or going to my Ravelry favorites or whatever was touching the topic of knitting planning, I started to feel anxiety. I did not like that feeling, and I was trying to think what was wrong with my previous knitting years that my brain now already predicts so much stress. And I know what was wrong. While I was very excited on my knits and I enjoyed every single stitch, I was constantly rushing. I was trying to finish garments for gift knitting at Christmas time. I was trying to do things at someone's birthday, and I just planned too much and not efficient. So I had too many repetitive items, but I was still cold because I missed things in my wardrobe that actually supposed to warm me up. And this year I want this to be different. I want to be excited about my knits. I want to be relaxed, and I don't want to feel any fear of missing out and a feeling that I actually should be knitting something else instead of my plans. I really took my time and I created 7 steps guide that should help you to plan your knits. Whatever you're planning, either is autumn or winter or summer knitting plans, you can come back to this video and use this structure, because when I used it, I already created my own knitting plans. I feel so much relief. It's like a weight off my shoulders, and now instead of anxiety, I feel excitement for the autumn to start. And if you know anyone who is feeling stressed during this before holiday season, if they're constantly in the rush and they feel overwhelmed, share this video with them, because I don't think knitting should be like that. We should enjoy it and we should feel joy and pleasure, because this is why we're knitting in the first place, right? So grab your notebook, grab your favorite drink, in my case is matcha latte, and let's plan our autumn/winter knits together. So now let's finally begin. The first step is to define of how much of the yarn from the stash you want to use. So every knitter has different situation. Maybe you just came back from the yarn festival and your yarn stash is full. Maybe you went heavy on the summer sale and you filled up your stash with just freshly bought yarn. Or maybe you didn't buy anything at all and you're actually looking forward to try new yarns and to buy new yarn. So you defined a number for yourself in percentage. How much of your stash do you want to use? So for example, in the end of this whole planning process, you have 10 projects, and 50% of that in the end you want to knit from stash, and 50% you're allowing yourself to buy new yarn without any guilt. When you have your boundary and the limit, you won't feel guilty to buy new yarn. So for example, let's take my case. I'm the person who has a lot of yarn and I wish I would have less, like most of us, but I also allow myself to buy new yarn because for some projects that I need to knit right now, I don't have the yarn in my stash. And so I set for myself 50%. In the end of my planning, half of the projects that I want to knit during this cold season should be knitted from the stash, and half of it I can buy. If I manage to knit more from stash, let's say 75%, and just buy a little bit, is even better. But I cannot buy more than half. And after you set that boundary, as I already said, you won't feel bad buying new yarn because you already negotiated this with yourself, and it's going to be a close question. How many times I heard in knitting planning videos that people force or want to knit from stash entirely, and they kind of put themselves on the yarn purchasing ban, and whenever they break that ban they feel bad and guilty and stressed. So to avoid all of this madness, you allow yourself to buy a certain amount of yarn and you don't feel guilty whenever you're purchasing it. Just don't break your limit. If you said to yourself that half of it or some percentage goes from the stash, don't cross that limit. After we decided how many projects are going to be knitted from stash, we're going to go to the step number 2, is setting up the direction of your mood. So what does that mean is to realize what are your preferences this season, because we're personalities that are growing and that are changing, and we can start liking different things and different styles. So for example, last year I was a person who preferred very elegant and minimalistic items. I wanted some soft textures, luxury fibers, and I wanted wanted some elegant pieces that I can just wear outside in a date with my husband, and no cables, no texture, nothing. This year I feel way more different. I feel like I'm coming back to my older childhood Evgenia that loves village. I'm from the village. I grew up to 6 years in a very harsh village with cows, with goats, with everything. And I was truly belonging to that type of style for my entire life inside. But since I lived in the city for a lot of time of my life, I was always, trying to fit in the office wear, elegant styles, romantic, feminine looks. So this season, I felt like I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't know what I actually like, and I absolutely don't follow any trends. I actually don't like trends, to be honest. So I was in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know what I like. And what actually helped me to discover that I want to come back to this village mood is I went on Pinterest and I just started to scroll and type just keywords that were coming to my mind. I was very relaxed and very connected with my inner self. And I started to realize that whatever I'm searching is things about the village, about nature, and it's all about natural materials, vegetables, trees, all about crisp, lofty yarn. There was no shiny silk or cashmere or anything like that that I liked from the past year. And what's really nice about Pinterest is that you can actually save the pins and create your own mood board. So after scrolling for a few hours in summary, I realized that I've created a whole mood board of a complete village nature-like style, but I don't have any knitwear for these type of cases. Most of my knitwear is quite fancy, elegant knits that are mostly appropriate for the city, and I already have the full wardrobe of them. I actually have ranked all of my knits in my previous video, actually 2 videos ago. Check that video out. It's very, very interesting what I think about my knits, how they serve me, flaws and regrets, and so on. I'm going to be linking the link in the description box. So that was a very good discovery about myself. And while there is not much even about knitting, we can already feel the mood and the vibe of the upcoming season. How you want to feel, what are you going to do usually? What are you missing, truly missing from the inside? What do you want to experience? What type of textures? What type of colors? All of that could be found in that mood board. So take your time and find your personal style that suits you this year, because you're not the same every single year. And what happens next is step number 3 of our planning. We need to take all of our yarn from the stash, prepare the floor or the couch or a huge table for taking all of this yarn from the stash and sorting it with the groups. So all of the sweater quantities first, then smaller quantities, and all the way to socks and scraps. And when you're going to see all of your yarn placed outside of your stash, at first, you will feel maybe overwhelmed, like I did once when I was moving from one place to another. Now I have even more stash, so I'll probably feel even more overwhelmed. But that is a good point because you remind yourself of what you actually have in stash. And in the first place, when you bought it, you loved that yarn and you were inspired by it. So it is your chance to get inspired again by what you already have. And you will have it in mind very fresh just recently whenever you're going to move to the further steps. And you will have more friction to buying new yarn. So I find it quite helpful, and also it is the chance to kind of reorganize your stash, put some new moth pads, and be ready for the knitting season. Now, step number 4 already involves us going to the patterns. So we want to write a huge list of the patterns that we just want to knit right now. Like if we would have needles and the yarn and the purchase pattern, we would just cast it on and knit with joy and excitement. So what I suggest that you first remember from your head the names of the patterns that you would like to cast on right now if you had a chance. Then we would go to Ravelry favorites, and then we would go to Instagram saves. So at this point, do not think what you need to knit, like, oh, I need to knit a hat for my father because he's getting cold. Oh, I need to knit a scarf because I'm cold, but I don't really want to. So this is not your knitting plans yet. It's just to unload your head, unload all of your ideas, and maybe to remember what is your actual excitement about knitting. What did you have in your mind? So instead of having it in your head and actually creating weight, you're having it all written down in the list. It can be as big list as you wish. You're not going to knit most of these these things because it's impossible, but it is very useful to understand what was there in your mind so we can see the clear picture. So first is just from my head. I'm writing down everything I've been wanting to cast on, and whoever is asking me what I'm going to be knitting next, these patterns come to my mind at first. Now, when you're done with using your memory, you can move on to Ravelry favorites, and from there you can already scroll very slow and relaxed as long as you need. And as I already said, before adding it into the list, always ask yourself, if I have the pattern and I have the yarn and the needles, am I going to be excited to cast this on and go through this? And when you're done with Ravelry favorites, you can maybe go on Instagram saves. If you save the posts on Instagram like I do, it could be really helpful. Because for example, in my list, I have a pattern that is now in testing and it's not out yet. And of course, it's not on Ravelry, but I do remember about it because it was saved on my Instagram. So now we have the full list of patterns that excite me, that I want to knit without any logic or mental analysis. And that's fine. We will deal with that later. So for now, what we want to do is we want to structure this list. And the way we're going to do it, we're going to bind patterns together. So in this list, we will be finding patterns that are connecting by style, by the purpose, by the format. So dress goes with dresses and skirt, blouses go with blouses, like sweaters with sweaters, and so on. So the way I did that is I started from the first pattern. So for example, in my case is cabled dress, and then I need to go through my list and find any other pattern that is either a dress or a skirt, and that is connected to my cabled dress, and that is connected to a skirt number 1 that I want to make, because they do serve similar purposes, skirts and dresses. So what I do is I write on the next page that is completely clean from both sides, that has a lot of space. I start to write dress, cabled, then skirt number 1, then campanula dress. And I leave 4 or 3 more points, like spaces, for future addings. So in the future, if new skirt is released or you found new skirt that you want to knit, you can add it, bind it to these patterns together. So it's a group of patterns. Next one is a ripple pullover, and ripple pullover is a blouse, very thin mohair blouse. So what I'm doing is I'm connecting this ripple pullover to every single blouse that I have in my list. So we see leaf blouse is a blouse, we see mist jumper is a blouse, and also I have wave tee. It's technically not a blouse, but I am going to be knitting it from quite a blowy yarn, and in my mind it is still related to blouses style because it has the boat neck and overall mood. So I put these all patterns together, and I'm leaving a few free spaces for the future addings as well. And we repeat the same action until we finish the list. Again, make sure that you leave a good amount of spaces right after each category, so you will be adding new patterns constantly. Because this is still a messy list, it's not a knitting plans yet. It is just the overall way more organized view at your favorites that you structured. Now finally we deserve the actual knitting plans to be done. So after we discovered what we liked this season, what is our mood about, we looked at our yarn stash, we took time to really take out all of the exciting projects from our head and from our favorites. So we did a lot of preparation to finally now divide our knitting plans into 4 categories. So the step number 6 is to actually divide your knitting plans in 4 categories. The first thing you need to do is to place your notebook horizontally. Make sure it's completely clean from both sides, and you will place your categories here in the top, 4 of them, and here you will fill in the step number 7. So whenever you open this, you will have the full picture of your actual knitting plans that is going to be ready to use. So what I'm doing right now is I'm dividing the page in 4 different sections, and I will now explain what every single section will mean, and after that, we will fill in these sections together in my example. The first section is called Practical Wardrobe. This is a section where you need to knit yourself an item. Yourself, not to someone else, not the item that you're excited, just the item that you desperately need in your wardrobe. For example, in my case, I'm really missing the neck warmer. I'm really getting cold in winter and I'm missing it. And I do need mittens for autumn and winter, both for the city and for the mountains. And no matter if I'm excited or not, I need to add it in this list. If you're excited and is desperately needed in your wardrobe, perfect. But In my case, a lot of times I'm just knitting this because I want to wear it and I want to enjoy the yarn, but I'm not really excited to knit it. What I also desperately need is a dress, for example, because last year I was dreaming about it and I really don't like to wear trousers all the time in winter. The next section is called exciting knits. So what does this mean? This means that you can put anything here that you want to knit and it is still wearable. So these could be items that you have in your wardrobe that serve similar purpose, but you still want another one because you love it or because some designer released a pattern that you want to try or any other reason. In my example, it's all about mohair blouses. I already knitted cumulus blouse on neck. I have cognac sweater by Atelier Caston that is also treated in my wardrobe like a blouse, but a thicker version. And I still want to knit more blouses. I want the leaf blouse from Moroccan Knit. I want ripple pullover, and I don't need that many blouses and I already have two beautiful ones, but it is still something I want to knit, and I'm still the biggest fan of mohair and I want to discover new mohairs, super soft ones, hand dyeds, different brands from different goats. Also crumble sweater in this category. Crumble sweater is a worsted weight all over cabled and structured knit, and I'm already knitting on a ram sweater, which is the same idea. It is cabled and structured knit that is almost a worsted weight but a bit less as a DK weight yarn. So do I need another structured sweater? Absolutely not. But do I want? Yes, I want that sweater and I have really interesting, beautiful yarn I want to try for this project and I will be super excited to knit it. So it is going to this category. The same goes for accessories, socks, or anything that you're excited of, but you absolutely don't need it in your wardrobe because you already have, or maybe it doesn't even serve the purpose that you need, but you do want to knit that project. The third category is very interesting. It is called Spark and Level Up. What does that mean? So these are all of the projects that create this inner spark inside us as knitters, something that when you see it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. This is so exciting. It can be anything. It can be technique. It can be color combination, color work, structure, anything. So at this point, you're just listening to your inner spark without any logic, without any question, do you need it or not, how you're going to wear it. A perfect example is I saw on the Pinterest when I was browsing through gloves with embroidery on top. I was like, what is this? I was shocked, and the amount of emotions I felt towards these embroideries was crazy. And then I went further and I started to look at sweaters, for example, plain raglan sweater or European shoulder sweater, but with embroidery on top, or scarves or any mittens or socks with embroidery was just like crazy for me. And then by the wording level up, I mean something that is also going to advance your skill as a knitter. You're learning something new while knitting these projects. So embroidery, I never tried. Color work, I never tried in my life. So any color work project that sparks me like that is going to go to this category. Maybe you've never tried a garment that is knit on 2.5mm needles, like Roberta's sweater from Olena Sitalkina is knit on 2.75mm needles. And a lot of people messaged me after I mentioned it in my pattern roundup for July. They told me, oh my god, I do want to knit this sweater, but I'm so afraid because I've never knitted on such tiny needles. So if that type of project creates a spark inside you and you want to try that technique or a new challenge, you're writing this into this category. The only advice that I have is first that you don't do any deadlines for these projects. So don't try to finish it before Halloween, someone's birthday, or Christmas, because remember that this is a project to spark you up, to keep your knitting excitement, to keep you interested in what you're doing overall during years. Because if you're knitting constantly projects that you can go through very easily, in my case, I can lose excitement a little bit. I always need that little challenge to constantly go out of my comfort zone, and also important to not go too much out of your comfort zone. For example, I desperately want to knit Alasuk from Leiken Neumann, but at this point I clearly understand that it's way beyond my capacities. I've never tried color work. This is three-stranded color work in a lot of places. Overall, it is a complicated color work, and I do need to modify it because in the pattern it is knit bottom up, and I want to modify it to knit top down. Also, I will need to add short rows in the yoke construction at the back with the color work. Like, no, not this year, and this is way beyond my comfort, and instead of creating spark, it is going to put me down. So It is very important to find that balance. I don't know what happened to me this year, but I'm so excited about colorwork mittens. I was very cold to these type of designs for all of these knitting years, and suddenly something sparked me in. So I already have the yarn for my colorwork mittens. I want to share this yarn here because I am so surprised. So this is Rambler from the Woolly Thistle yarn shop in USA, and this is the yarn that they actually produce themselves. This is a fingering weight yarn, and that was actually designed for socks. And when I read about this on Ravelry and just reviews in the internet, people were saying that it's very rustic, like way more rustic that they can handle to the skin. But when I received it, I was so shocked that it's not so rustic and is actually softer than Isair Jensen. I did not find it rustic. Of course, maybe I can't really much wear it towards the neck, but I think I could easily handle the sweater in it, and I'm quite a sensitive person. But I don't want to claim that it's soft, right? And again, I will repeat that the Woolly Thistle, the owners of the yarn shop, produce this yarn themselves. So every single ship is based in the US, is completely US based production. So the contents of the yarn is 100% wool. It is 420 yards per 100 grams. I don't know how much is in meters. And the breed of sheep that they use to produce this yarn is 80% Dorset sheep, 10% Corriedale, and 10% Romney, Grey Romney. I think this is one of my new favorite yarns, and I'm very happy to use it for the mittens. I'm not going to use it for socks, even though it was kind of designed for socks. They say it's very durable, natural sock yarn without any polyamide, but as usually, I'm quite greedy when it comes to sock wearing, and I'm going to be using this for mittens. Each hank contains of 100 grams, and I think it's enough for 2 or 3 pair of mittens, so probably we'll have to need something else with this. So when I was picking the colors, I really liked this really warm teal dusty color that is blue spruce, and very natural warm light creamy base that is natural. So if you want to also knit with this yarn, either colorwork projects or just cardigans or sweaters, you can use my link to purchase this yarn from the US, and they do ship over Europe and other parts of the world. And this is an affiliate link because I am partnering with the Woolly Thistle shop, and whenever you're purchasing either Rambler base or any other yarn from their shop, I'm getting a small percentage at no cost to you, just because we're partnering with this shop. So by purchasing yarn from that shop and enjoying it, you kind of support my channel, and I'm earning a small commission. Oh my god, it smells so good. It smells very slightly like a sheep, but it's not irritating smell. It's very pleasant, just like I'm walking by the village and I'm looking at the sheeps, this type of feeling. So I'm actually dreaming to knit the whole garment in it, but it is quite a pricey yarn, so maybe in the future. And finally, we're reaching the fourth category, which is holidays and family. What is this category about? This is everything that we want to knit before holidays, gift knitting for Christmas, knits for the Halloween. Some people have gardens and they have important harvesting dates. So if you harvest anything in autumn and you want to knit something special for it, you can knit your pumpkin socks or anything else. So everything that you want to finish to the deadline and that is connected to the holiday goes here. Also in the same category goes anything that you want to knit not for yourself. So your family, your friends, your children, whatever you want to knit for someone else goes into that category. And if you want to knit for someone else and you have a deadline, when you're writing the pattern in this column, you need to put the date until which it has to be done. So instead of having in your head like, oh, Christmas is coming, my father is going to receive this sweater, mother is this shawl, instead of doing that, put yourself exact deadline and start early. So when you have this all exposed in the column, you actually see the scope of work that you need to be doing for someone else. So maybe you reconsider your gift knitting, and also you can start way before. I actually suggest that you start knitting your Christmas gifts right now. So when it's December and you have a lot of vacations, people visiting, your personal needs, if you're a YouTuber like me, you also need to post videos in December. I felt huge stress every December as I was knitting and as I'm here on the channel, and I don't want this anymore. So at this point, when the columns are ready, you can go back to the list that you created just recently that is already structured and bound by category. You go back to this list and you see what do you want to put in which column, what is catching your eye. So our 4 columns are formed and we have already knitting plans done, but I do encourage you to keep space for the future ideas. The worst thing to do is to plan too much and feel like you're always behind. Instead, it's very nice to plan less that you are thinking and then maybe overdo yourself and you feel way more satisfied. If you look at my last video about autumn knitting plans, you would be really surprised how many I planned, because I was too excited and I didn't have this structure with me. Now I'm looking at my knitting plans and they're very humble, and some of them go beyond Christmas time. So for example, crumble sweater, if I don't finish it before Christmas, it's absolutely fine. I don't have a deadline for that. The only thing that has kind of deadline is practical wardrobe, because it's getting cold and I want to need them for, my comfort. So they do have kind of a deadline. And right now, let's move on to the last step for this planning journey. It is step number 7, set the direction and set the values that you want to follow. So this should be on the second page of your planning. So in the top, you have these 4 categories, and right in the bottom of the horizontal page, you have these values and directions that you want to follow. So let's write those directions down. The first direction is the yarn that you want to try of a special segment, maybe a luxury yarn that you wanted to try. This is of course optional, but if you were thinking, oh, I would really like to try in this, I don't know, yak fiber or cashmere fiber or anything that is very special to you, and you're ready to invest your budget in that, you can set the direction here. So choose only one yarn. If it's very expensive yarn, I think one yarn per season is more than enough, at least for me. If you have the budget, of course, do 2 or 3 or whatever you want. Let's write down special yarn to try, and then in front of it, we're writing the name of the yarn. In my case, I already chose the yarn and I bought it for myself because my birthday is 22nd of August. And I really treated myself. I bought the yarn with Angora, and I will be knitting with this in winter because Angora is extremely hot and very fluffy. So I think winter is a perfect time. And right next, you can write down the normal regular yarn that you want to try and that does not cost that much. It's either mid-price range or cheap price in your opinion. In my case, I don't really have an idea of a specific yarn that I want to try from regular segment, so I will leave this section open, empty. And of course, during the knitting season, something will pop up and I will be adding this name into this section. The second direction is a construction or a technique that you want to be trying. If you never knitted, for example, bottom up, but there is a specific design or you want to experience this type of construction, you can add it. If you never knitted colorwork, just like me, you can add it into the list. If you knit colorwork before, but you never sticked the garment, like cut through the fabric, and you want to try it, write this into this direction. So something new to try to level up your skill. The third direction is design and pattern preferences. What does this mean? So for example, a lot of people try to restrict themselves from knitting by petite knit because they feel like it's such a popular designer and they want to branch out to different ones. Some people are the opposite. They actually want to knit from petite knit more because they feel very comfortable, safe and predictable with this designer. In my case, I do want to knit more from Korean designers because, as you know, I'm a big fan of them and I have an entire playlist on my channel with pattern inspiration. Check this playlist out. I will be putting the link in the description box. It doesn't mean that I will be always knitting with Korean designers, but I will set the direction and try to always come back to what can I knit from Korean designs, what did I like before, and so on. Some people actually want to start only knitting from size inclusive patterns or some other criteria that is very important to you. So set your direction and write it down in front of this third section. I'm looking at my plans and I'm so happy. I'm so excited. I know where I'm going. I know that I went through all of my desires and I listened through my every single instinct, and I went through all of my Ravelry favorites. So it was very useful and it was completely worth the time. If you found this video useful and actually necessary for knitting community, just like I did, please share it on social media. I will be extremely grateful if you help spread me this video. If you want to go further and get even more inspired, you can go to my last video. That was a knitting podcast where I finished a very cool project. It was a hoodie for my husband where I'm knitting my Orem sweater from Korean designer and some other projects. So you can watch that video if you haven't yet and enjoy some more of knitting inspiration. And of course, I want to be hearing about your knitting plans. I don't want you to write down all of the 4 categories, right, in the comments, but please let me know about 1 or 2 very exciting projects that you cannot wait to start knitting. Thank you very much for watching and I'm hoping to see you soon in my next video.